Okay, now we're going to talk about the distribution tab. In the distribution tab, that uses several modes to scatter your object. Image, path, and reference are the ones we're going to be looking at. In image, we use this image here to populate our scene. So what does this image exactly do? It's similar to Photoshop in terms of a mask. So black is invisible, white is visible. So to make that more illustrative, I'm going to use this menu and you can pick different ones. So if I hit patches, you'll see we have this shape, and I can go down and I can pick several more. I'm going to stay on this one so I can show you what's happening. So you can see this kind of V shape here, right here. That's here in this image. So what it's doing is it's scattering this image in world coordinates based on where your object is. So if I hit my grid, you can see I have the center point here, the origin of the world here, which will be the bottom left of this image. But that will change based on these units you have here. So at the moment, this grid I have is 100 meters by 100 meters. You can see here. So if I go back to my object, these units here are set to 100 meters by 100 meters. I'm going to click this lock aspect ratio to keep it like that. So if I increase this, you can see what's happening is the image is getting larger and smaller. That's basically what's happening. You're telling it, oh, I want this image to cover 100 meters. But say I want it to cover 200 meters. Well, what you're doing is you're doubling the size of that image. To show that, I'm going to go back to 100 meters and I'm going to bring back to show these pieces of geometry. I'm going to add them into the forest per object. So if I go to surfaces, I'm going to add these in like so. I'm going to go back to my distribution tab. So now we can kind of see a pattern happen. So if I go to 100 meters, you can see that's going to repeat itself. So you can see this shape here is also here. So it repeats itself every 100 meters, often like 3ds Max with textures. Now if I go 200 meters, it's now that image scaled up all over this 200 meter squared square. So that's how you need to get around this. Units are very important. If I put this down to 50, it's now very dense because of scaling that image down to 50 by 50 meters squared. You can also add in a map in here, and you can select you could go in here and say checker, and you could add in a checker and create that pattern, whichever one you want, or add in a noise pattern. Moving down, we have a pick start and pick end, which is pretty obvious what it does. So if I pick a start, I can select up here, and I want the image here to start at this point, and end I can pick down here. Now you'll see the image kind of warped a bit. So what's happened is these units have changed, and this lock aspect ratio has been unchecked because we're now not square, because I just picked that endpoint wherever I wanted. If I wanted, I could pick up here, hit S, click here, and then pick end and snap to here. Now what's happened is it's up here, it's gone 200 by 200, just like we set it ourselves, because we know this square is 200 by 200 and it has an aspect ratio. So I can lock that and it won't change at all. Again, you can offset it in the X and Y. Threshold isn't too important right now. And we can also obviously rotate it. Again, it's just rotating the image. Your max density. And then we move on to the diversity. So I'm going to decrease this down to 100. And I'm going to reset the rotation. And in diversity, we have random, which is what you can expect. It just randomly puts plants or objects all around your scene. But the next one we can do is match color ID on map. So what does that mean? If I go to my geometry, you'll see how I have IDs here. These IDs will match any color ID you put in to your surface now, into your surface, not into your forest per object, but into the surface below. So if I turn off the forest per object and I go to my materials, I have this object here, which matches the colors of my Forest Pro object. So I can select this and apply it to all these materials. I can then go to materials, shaded materials with maps, And now you can see that map being repeated across these surfaces. So let's go back to our distribution. One thing I wanted to add in that I forgot in the video is you need to make sure that your map has the same size as your distribution, or the same size that you want. Just something to be aware of in case you're not getting the results you want. But if I go to my distribution and I go back to my material, I can then drag this bitmap into this here if I select it first. Then I select here, drag this in, and you'll see that all the objects are matching the color underneath. This is one way you can create some interesting patterns, and it could be like a field of flowers, which I'll show you now. So if I go into here and I go into my course files, references, and I do my reference ID map, you see you could create something like this. So if you had IDs on a texture, you could say, oh, I just want these flowers, and these, and that's a quick way you can create those. And you can change the texture itself, and all the objects in Forest Pro would update automatically. So just something to be aware of. The last one is clusters. So in a lot of planting, you'd plant plants together in clusters. So if I select clusters now, you'll see everything starts coming together in clusters. This size is just basically how large the clusters are. If I go 50, it makes them even bigger. And then we can also do roughness. By default, these will all be on 0. Roughness will just add a bit more edge to your clusters. Again, blurry edge will do pretty much the same and just make it a bit blurrier. And then noise will just add in bits into other clusters. So you can see they start populating randomly into other clusters. And collision, the very last thing, I'm not going to show you here, but I'm going to pop onto the PDF of I2 and explain it here. So basically what collisions do is it works in scattering items and deleting any trees that might collide with their neighbors. So you can see here, you can change the global radius. If I bring this over here, bear with me. You have a setting over here, which is radius and height. And based on those, you can decide how far things get deleted as close as they get to the tree. I haven't used it that often, so that's why I didn't want to involve it in this course. Maybe in a project down the road, we'll go more into that. But if you want, you can go into I2 and check the collision on their site. And that's pretty much it. The next one we'll be going on to is the path distribution mode.